I want to welcome you back today to GLBC Connections. We're going to begin this week on Mark 5. As we do, I'm reminded of a picture that's quite famous. It's from, you'll recall, Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square in 1989 was the site of a lot of unrest on the part of the Chinese people, and the Chinese government was ready to put an end to it, and so they sent in the military. And you'll remember the photo of the single solitary man who stepped in front of a line of tanks and stopped them from entering the square. It's a striking photo, the power of one man arrayed against all the power of the Chinese military, the Chinese government, and the Chinese authority. And it's so striking because of how amazing it is that one man could stop all of that. Well, I mention that because that's the idea, I think, behind Mark chapter 4 and Mark chapter 5, so specifically the end of Mark chapter 4. You'll recall that at the end of Mark chapter 4, as Brian talked about last week, there was a storm on the sea. The disciples and Jesus were in a boat, and the storm is really trying to stop Jesus from doing what he wanted to do. And we learn that Jesus has complete and total authority over creation and over that storm. Well, Mark chapter 5 it tells basically the same story, but in a slightly different way. And I want to begin with just the first few verses of Mark chapter 5. It's Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 1. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Well, here we see Jesus entering into a Gentile area, expanding his mission, and yet a man comes and tries to stop him, a man with great power, a man who cannot be bound by chains, a man who cannot be bound by all the people within this Gentile area. He has complete and utter control, and he comes out to stop Jesus. I'm sure you know this story quite well, but I want to keep reading and see more of the forces that are arrayed against Jesus. So let's see how the story unfolds in verse 6. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What's your name?" The man replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs were feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." Jesus gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Well, we see that Jesus has complete power over this man and complete power over his authority. What's interesting is there is more here arrayed against Jesus. It's a little harder for us to see. It says that these spirits were impure. They were unclean. That's an Old Testament idea. It was uncleanness was not sin, and it was not the idea that we have of hygiene. Rather, uncleanness it was an idea where we were reminded, or the Jewish people were reminded, that certain things kept them from God. And so uncleanness were symbolic reminders typically of what kept people from their relationship with God. So the man had demons inside of him, and they made the man impure, unable to come to God. But Jesus was also entering a Gentile area, and all the Jewish people considered that area unclean. They were not to intermarry with Gentile people. They were not to participate in Gentile lifestyle. And so Jesus enters this unclean area, and that's arrayed against him. And then, of course, the people have an unclean vocation. They're raising pigs, based probably for the Roman army. And here we see then Jesus steps into an unclean area and is faced with unclean spirits, with an unclean man, people who had an unclean vocation. And all that is also arrayed against Jesus. And he stands there by himself. And again, I want you to picture that man from Tiananmen Square facing down those tanks all by himself. That's the idea that Mark has here in Mark chapter 5. The idea is that all of this uncleanness and all of this power is arrayed against Jesus, and the legion of demons within the man, all arrayed against Jesus, all standing before him saying, "You do not belong here." And yet, when Jesus speaks to the man, it's complete, total capitulation. The demons, the man, all the uncleanness, none of it has power against Jesus. This is the authority of Jesus Christ. He is the one who steps into uncleanness and makes it right. He is the one who enables a relationship with God. Normally, when an unclean thing came in contact with another unclean thing, or with a clean thing, an unclean thing made the clean thing unclean, right? That seems obvious. If you put a little bit of dirt in a glass of water, you've made the whole glass of water dirty. Jesus does the opposite of that. Jesus is the one who is clean, and he makes the unclean things clean. He has power and authority to repair those relationships with God. All of Mark chapter 5 really is about Jesus' power and authority. And again, beginning in Mark chapter 4. In Mark chapter 4, we see Jesus' power and authority against the external chaos of the storm. But here we see Jesus' power and authority against the internal chaos of the legion, the demons within the man, and all the uncleanness of the area. And we recognize Jesus has the authority to make things right. That's who we serve. That's who he is. Jesus has that authority, and that's who we worship. Thanks for joining us today.